I'm Barbara Mitchell, and I thought family drama meant petty arguments over holiday plans or forgotten chores. Nothing like this. At my daughter's 18th birthday party in a California park, her piercing scream from the changing tent sliced through the barbecue laughter. I bolted inside, heart racing, and stopped dead. Her long, dark hair was strewn across the ground, her scalp bare, glinting faintly in the tent's dim light. She was sobbing, hands clutching her face, while my sister stood there, smirking in a floral dress, clippers buzzing softly on a nearby table. "What the hell did you do?" I demanded. Voice trembling with rage. She laughed. That smug chuckle she uses to dodge trouble. It's just a joke. Sis, she'll laugh it off soon. My hand flew before I could think slap, sharp and echoing. I grabbed my daughter's arm, pulling her past gaping relatives, and stormed to the car, behind us. Mom's voice cut like a knife, bastard child. You always stir up trouble. I didn't look back. The next morning, Mom appeared at my door, eyes swollen, voice barely a whisper. Please, give your sister a way to live. That moment unraveled a secret that would tear our family apart forever. If you've ever faced a family betrayal that flipped your world, hit like and subscribe for Raw. Gripping stories like this. Share your own drama in the comments below. I felt fury surge through me like a wave. Get out, I snapped. Slamming the door in her face, her words hung in the air, but they only fueled my resolve no more giving in. My mind reeled back to the party chaos, the tense flap still flapping in my memory, after the slap. My sister clutched her cheek, her eyes wide. I had to stop her from going to the after party, she murmured, glancing at my daughter, who huddled in the corner, shaking. I stepped closer, breath hot. Stop her from what? I hissed. She fumbled for her phone, hands trembling, and thrust it forward. Photos filled the screen marks on my daughter's arms, bruised impressions from fingers gripping too tight, others on her ribs, hidden spots where clothes covered the damage. That boyfriend of hers, my sister explained, voice dropping. I caught him roughing her up behind the school gym last week. He's been doing this for months. I scrolled through the images, a chill spreading in my gut. My daughter looked up, her face pale, and nodded slowly. It's true, Mom, she whispered, fresh tears spilling. My husband burst in then, his frame rigid, muscles coiled like springs. He took the phone from me, his expression darkening as he saw the marks. How long? He growled, turning to our daughter, his voice cracking with barely contained anger. She shrank back, wiping her face. Since spring, she admitted, her words barely audible. He paced the tent floor, fists clenched, then knelt beside her. Why hide it? He asked, softer now, though his body stayed tense. She shrugged, staring at the ground. He said I'd lose everything if I told. The confession hit like a punch. Mixing shock with guilt, we'd missed the signs. But my sister hadn't. I pocketed the phone, knowing this was just the beginning. That evening, Tyler pounded on our front door like he owned the place. I opened it a crack, seeing his face twisted in anger under the porch light. He demanded to know why Amber wasn't answering his calls. I blocked the doorway, telling him to leave before things got worse. Tyler pushed forward, yelling that Cynthia was lying about everything. He claimed the bruises were from a fall during a hike last week, nothing to do with him. Amber peeked from the hallway, her voice shaking as she told him to go, but Tyler ignored her, stepping inside uninvited. Anthony came downstairs, his jaw set tight. He stood beside me, warning Tyler to back off. Tyler laughed, pulling out his phone. He said he'd prove we were all crazy. Then he turned to Anthony, smirking. He mentioned that day at the school parking lot 2 weeks ago. Anthony's face drained of color. I asked what he meant. Anthony admitted he'd seen a mark on Amber's neck during dinner and confronted Tyler after class. He'd grabbed Tyler's collar against his car, threatening to end him if he laid a hand on Amber again. Tyler had recorded the whole thing secretly. He played a snippet the audio clear with Anthony's voice growling the threat. Tyler waved the phone, saying his dad would bury us in court if we kept this up. I felt my temper flare, but kept calm. I asked Amber if Tyler had ever recorded her too. She nodded, whispering about times he'd filmed arguments to twist later. Tyler snapped at her to shut up, calling her dramatic. That pushed me over. I grabbed my own phone, starting to record him right there. Tyler lunged for it, but Anthony stepped between us, shoving him back. Tyler stumbled, cursing. He threatened to call the cops on Anthony for assault again. I told him to try it, that we had proof of his real crimes. Tyler's eyes narrowed. He said no one would believe Amber over him. His family had connections in Albuquerque. He mocked Cynthia as a jealous aunt, meddling in things she didn't understand. Amber started crying, begging him to stop. Tyler softened his tone. Trying to pull her aside, he whispered promises to fix everything if she'd just come with him. I yanked her back, slamming the door in his face, but Tyler didn't leave. He banged on the window, yelling, "We'd regret this." Neighbors' lights flicked on. Aaron must have heard the commotion. Tyler finally stormed to his truck, tires screeching as he sped off into the desert night. Inside, Anthony paced the kitchen, admitting he'd messed up by not telling me about the confrontation. He worried the video would make him look like the aggressor. I hugged him, saying we'd face it together. Amber sat at the table, her hands clasped tight. She revealed Tyler had used similar threats before to keep her quiet about the pushes and grabs. I noted everything down, adding to our file. Anthony suggested locking the doors extra tight tonight. As we turned off the lights, I couldn't shake Tyler's parting words he'd make sure our family paid, but I pushed it aside, focusing on getting through the night. Tomorrow we'd take the next step. By morning, I was at the Albuquerque police station, Amber by my side, clutching my hand. I handed over the screenshots of Tyler's texts and Cynthia's photos of Amber's bruises. The officer, a stern woman named Karen Davis, listened as I explained how Tyler had been hurting Amber for months. She jotted notes, her eyes narrowing at the images of finger marks on Amber's wrists. I insisted we needed help now, before Tyler came back. Karen promised to send a patrol to watch our street and told us to get Amber's injuries checked at the hospital. We drove straight to Presbyterian Hospital, the desert sun glaring through the windshield. Amber was quiet, staring out the window, in the exam room. A doctor measured the bruises on her ribs and arms, her face grim as she documented each mark. A nurse snapped photos, noting dates for evidence. Amber flinched when they asked how long it had been happening. She whispered it started small grabs during fights, but got worse over months. The doctor confirmed it was abuse, recommending a counselor. I nodded, holding Amber's hand tighter, my throat burning with regret for not noticing sooner. Back home, Aaron Wallace, our neighbor who ran a flower shop, knocked on our door. She'd seen Tyler's truck speeding off last night and heard rumors at the high school about his temper. Aaron mentioned catching him yelling at Amber behind the gym once, his hands too rough. I thanked her, scribbling her account for the police. She hugged Amber, promising to check in later. As Aaron left, Dorothy showed up unannounced, her face pale and eyes red. She begged me to forgive Cynthia. saying she'd only been trying to protect Amber. I cut her off, asking why she'd called me that name at the party. Dorothy hesitated, then admitted Cynthia was her daughter from another man, before she married my dad. The words hit hard. I'd grown up thinking we were full sisters. Dorothy claimed Cynthia acted out of love, shaving Amber's head to keep her safe from Tyler. She pleaded for me to drop the police report, saying it'd ruin Cynthia's life. She'd just lost her job at the mall. I shook my head, my voice steady. Cynthia's choices weren't my burden, and Amber's safety came first. Dorothy's eyes flashed with anger, accusing me of tearing the family apart. She stormed out, muttering about fixing this herself. I locked the door, my hand shaking from the weight of her secret. Anthony came home from the bank, his tie loose. I told him about Dorothy's visit and the hospital report. He cursed under his breath, saying we should have acted sooner. I showed him Aaron's notes, adding them to our file. Later, I called Karen Davis to update her with Aaron's story. She said they'd interviewed a teacher who'd seen Tyler corner Amber at school. The pieces were coming together, but I felt no relief. Amber was in her room, sketching to calm down. I sat with her, promising we'd get through this. She asked if Cynthia would get in trouble. I said we'd let the police decide. That night, I checked the locks twice, Tyler's threats echoing in my head. I emailed the hospital photos to Karen, ensuring our evidence was tight. Amber fell asleep with her sketchbook open, and I tucked her in, vowing to keep her safe no matter what. A few days later, Karen Davis called from the Albuquerque police station with news that turned my stomach. They'd searched Tyler's truck and found a small bag of pills hidden under the passenger seat. Karen said they were testing them, but suspected they were meant to harm Amber at a party he'd planned. Tyler was arrested that afternoon, hauled out of his house in cuffs while neighbors watched. I exhaled, gripping the phone, but the relief was short-lived. That evening, Ronald Reed, Tyler's father, called our house. His voice was sharp, a lawyer's tone, threatening to sue us for defamation and assault if we didn't drop the case. He claimed Anthony's parking lot stunt gave them leverage to ruin us. Anthony overheard, his face tense, muttering that Ronald's law firm had crushed bigger families than ours. I told Ronald we had proof texts, photos, hospital reports. He laughed, saying no judge would take a teenager's word over his son's. I hung up, my pulse racing, and added his call to our evidence log. The next morning, a woman from Child Protective Services named Linda Carter arrived at our door for a routine check. She interviewed Amber in her room, asking if she felt safe at home. Amber nodded, clutching a pillow, and explained how we were protecting her from Tyler. Linda spoke to Anthony and me in the kitchen, flipping through her clipboard. She reviewed the police report and hospital photos, then said our home was stable, but urged us to get Amber counseling. I agreed, scheduling a session for her that week as Linda left. Amber came downstairs, her eyes red. She said kids at school were whispering about her. Tyler's friends had started rumors, calling her a liar who faked her bruises for attention. One of them, a kid named Jake, slipped a note into her locker, saying Tyler just wanted to talk and fix things. Amber tore it up, but came home shaking. I photographed the note scraps and emailed them to Karen. She replied quickly, saying they'd add it to Tyler's file as harassment. I drove Amber to school the next day, noticing kids staring as we pulled into the lot. A girl from her class muttered something as Amber passed, loud enough for me to hear, calling her a drama queen. I walked Amber to the counselor's office, where a woman named Diane Torres promised to monitor the hallways. Diane said she'd heard other students complain about Tyler's crew before, and the school was taking it seriously. Back home, Anthony was on edge, checking his phone for updates from Karen. He worried Ronald's threats could backfire, especially with that video of him grabbing Tyler. I reminded him our evidence was stronger: Amber's bruises, the texts, Aaron's account. Karen called again, saying they'd confirmed the pills were a sedative, illegal for Tyler to have. She'd tracked down Jake, who admitted Tyler asked him to spike drinks at a party. Jake was scared, spilling everything to avoid trouble. I felt a chill, realizing how close Amber had come to danger. Anthony suggested we change her phone number to stop Tyler's friends from texting her. I called the provider right away, setting it up. Amber spent evenings sketching in her room, avoiding social media where rumors spread. I sat with her, listening as she described feeling like everyone was against her. I promised we'd fight this together. Cynthia called once, asking if Amber was okay, but I kept it short. Her role in this mess still stung, and I wasn't ready to talk. Dorothy sent a text, begging again to drop the charges, claiming Cynthia was falling apart without work. I deleted it, focusing on Amber's safety. Erin stopped by with a bouquet from her shop, saying the neighborhood was buzzing about Tyler's arrest. She'd heard his family was losing clients at Ronald's firm. People didn't trust them anymore. I thanked her, adding her gossip to our notes. As weeks passed, Karen built a case, warning us Ronald was pulling strings to delay a hearing. I kept Amber close, driving her to school and back, watching for Tyler's friends. Every night, I checked her windows, the desert air heavy with tension. We were holding strong, but the fight was far from over. 2 months later, we sat in the Albuquerque courtroom, the air thick with tension. Amber gripped my hand under the table, her face pale but determined. The judge, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes, called the case. Karen Davis stood with the prosecutor, presenting our evidence: hospital photos, Tyler's texts, Aaron's statement, and Jake's confession about the party plan. Ronald Reed, in a slick suit, leaned close to Tyler, whispering strategies. His legal team tried to paint Tyler as a misunderstood teen, claiming Amber's injuries were from sports and the texts were just playful banter. I clenched my fists, biting back a retort. The prosecutor called Amber to the stand. She walked up, her voice steady despite trembling hands, describing how Tyler controlled her life, dictating her clothes, isolating her from friends, grabbing her hard enough to leave marks. She recounted an incident at a school dance where he'd pinned her against a wall, hissing threats if she talked to other guys. The courtroom went silent, jurors leaning forward. Amber's eyes met mine, and I nodded, urging her to keep going. Next, Cynthia took the stand, her posture stiff. She admitted shaving Amber's head, explaining she'd overheard Tyler's plan to harm her at a party. She played a video she'd recorded secretly, a shaky clip of Tyler bragging to Jake about spiking Amber's drink to keep her quiet. The jurors' faces hardened, one woman shaking her head. Ronald objected, arguing the video was inadmissible, but the judge overruled, saying it was recorded in a public park with no expectation of privacy. Tyler's smirk faded, his hands fidgeting. The prosecutor brought up the pills found in Tyler's truck, confirmed as sedatives meant to incapacitate. Karen testified about Jake's statement, sealing Tyler's intent. Ronald's team scrambled, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, but their arguments sounded hollow. The judge called a recess, and I hugged Amber outside, telling her she was brave. Anthony joined us, his eyes red but proud. Cynthia lingered nearby, trying to catch my eye. I ignored her, still raw from her actions and Dorothy's betrayal. Back in the courtroom. The jury returned after 3 hours. The foreman stood, voice clear guilty on charges of assault, conspiracy to harm, and possession of illegal substances. Tyler's shoulders slumped, Ronald's face turning red as he whispered furiously to his lawyers. The judge set sentencing for the following week, warning Tyler to expect jail time. As we left, Ronald cornered us in the hallway, his voice low and venomous. He vowed to appeal, claiming we'd regret dragging his family's name through the mud. I stared him down, saying our evidence spoke louder than his threats. He stormed off, leaving Tyler alone, head bowed, outside. Dorothy was waiting by our car, her hands wringing. She begged me to talk, to forgive Cynthia for what she did out of love. I cut her off, my voice cold. Their secrets and excuses had cost us enough. Cynthia stood behind her, silent, eyes downcast. I told them both I was done. No more family ties, no more chances. Amber squeezed my arm, nodding in agreement. We walked away, leaving them standing in the courthouse lot. Anthony drove us home, the desert stretching wide around us. Amber leaned against me in the back seat, whispering thanks for standing by her. I kissed her forehead, promising we'd rebuild together. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the case file closed. Tyler's conviction felt like a weight lifted, but Dorothy and Cynthia's pleas echoed in my mind. I pushed them aside, knowing my choice was right. Amber deserved a fresh start. And so did I. We'd face the next steps without their baggage. A week after the trial, Tyler was sentenced to 2 years in juvenile detention, with 3 years of probation and mandatory counseling. Karen called to say he'd already caused trouble, picking fights with smaller kids in the facility, just like he'd done with Amber. His family's name carried no weight there, and Ronald's appeals failed, the judge citing Tyler's pattern of aggression in Albuquerque. Word spread fast. Ronald's law firm took a hit, clients pulled out, unwilling to trust a man whose son was a convicted abuser. Aaron texted me updates, saying neighbors avoided their family, whispering about the scandal. I didn't care about their downfall. My focus was Amber. She started therapy at a local clinic, meeting a counselor named Laura Perez twice a week. Laura helped her unpack the fear Tyler had instilled, teaching her to recognize red flags in relationships. Amber opened up slowly, admitting she'd felt trapped for months, blaming herself for his anger. I sat in on family sessions, learning to listen without pushing. Anthony joined too, leaving work early to be there, something he'd never done before. Amber's confidence grew. She joined the school art club, her sketches turning bolder, filled with desert colors. I framed one of her drawings, a cactus under a blazing sun, and hung it in our living room. Dorothy and Cynthia, though, became ghosts in our lives. Aaron mentioned Cynthia lost her apartment after her job at the mall ended, moving in with Dorothy in a cramped rental on the edge of town. Neighbors stopped inviting them to barbecues, their reputations stained by the trial's fallout. Dorothy sent one last letter, her handwriting shaky, begging for a chance to explain. She claimed Cynthia's act saved Amber, that I owed them forgiveness. I tore it up, tossing it in the trash. Their secret, Cynthia's parentage. Their lies had broken us beyond repair. I blocked their numbers, cutting them off for good. Amber asked about them once, her voice soft. I told her we didn't need people who hurt us, even if they were family. She nodded, understanding more than I expected. Anthony and I focused on rebuilding our home. We started weekly dinners, just the three of us, talking about school or work over plates of enchiladas. Amber laughed more, her smile returning. I took on extra tutoring jobs at the elementary school, saving a few $100s a month to cover therapy costs. One evening, Erin invited us to her flower shop's anniversary party. Amber mingled with neighbors, her short hair now styled in a pixie cut she loved. She told me it reminded her she'd survived, thanks to us standing firm. I watched her chat with a new friend, a girl from art club, and felt a surge of pride. My own life shifted too. I joined a book club at the local library, meeting women who shared stories of cutting toxic ties. Their support grounded me, reminding me I wasn't alone. One night, Amber showed me a flyer for a teen advocacy group at her school, focused on dating abuse awareness. She wanted to speak at their first event, to help others spot warning signs like she hadn't. I hugged her, saying she was stronger than she knew. Anthony backed her up, offering to drive her to meetings. As months passed, our house felt lighter, free from the weight of Dorothy and Cynthia's drama. I stood in our backyard one evening, the desert breeze cool against my skin. Amber was inside, sketching at the kitchen table, her laughter drifting out. I'd built a life for us, one where trust and safety came first. The lesson was hard-won. Family isn't about blood, it's about who stands by you when it counts. Cutting off those who hurt us wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Amber and I were proof of that, and no one could take it away.
The text arrived between helping customers at my boutique. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account, haha. My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice didn't waver as I helped Mrs. Peterson pick out a scarf. The only sign that my husband of 12 years had just nuked our marriage via text was a slight tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mrs. Peterson left, her purchase wrapped in our signature silver paper, before typing my response. Good luck. My name is Claire, and at 38, I'd just received the most callous goodbye in history. But while Mark was probably gloating over his grand exit, imagining me in tears over his betrayal, I was calmly locking up my boutique for the day. The signs had been there for months. The late nights at work that never matched his pay deposits. The sudden password changes on his phone. The way he'd started going to the gym religiously, buying new clothes, trying to recapture his youth. 3 months ago, I'd found a receipt for dinner for two at an expensive restaurant on a night he'd claimed to be working late. That same evening, I'd opened a separate bank account at a different bank. A week later, when he mentioned wanting to combine our accounts to simplify things, I'd agreed cheerfully while moving my personal savings to the new account. The joint account he'd just emptied? It contained exactly enough to keep him from getting suspicious, about 2 months' worth of regular deposits. The rest was safely tucked away, along with detailed records of every suspicious transaction he'd made over the past year. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Melissa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Melissa. The new receptionist at his office. I'd met her at the company Christmas party, watched her laugh too loudly at Mark's jokes, noticed how she'd touched his arm when she thought no one was looking. She was young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to think she was special. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd consulted 2 months ago when I'd found the hotel charges on our credit card statement. It's time, I said simply. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Miami? No rush. Let him think he's won first. Another text from Mark. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The successful boutique I'd built from scratch. The one that generated more income than his middle management position. The one whose profits I'd carefully kept separate from our joint finances. I smiled, thinking of the certified letters that would greet him in Miami. Let him enjoy his moment of triumph. I spent that evening in our house. My house, since I'd inherited it from my grandmother, and kept it in my name despite Mark's repeated suggestions to add him to the deed. Another lucky instinct that had paid off. While organizing the paperwork my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. Mark looked so different then, before his midlife crisis had turned him into a caricature of his former self. These days he wore shirts too tight for his softening middle, tried too hard to connect with the 20-somethings at his office, used slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a man of 45. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him, each one more condescending than the last. I've been planning this for months. Melissa understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more your own age. Already told my family. They agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault, really. I screenshotted each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would love his casual admission of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The last text caught my attention. BTW, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift, LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. Mrs. Harrison speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Miami booked today. Hotel charges at the Royal Palm. And I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The representative's professional tone couldn't quite hide her satisfaction as she canceled the charges. Mark and Melissa would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated, their hotel reservation canceled. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had any claim to my grandmother's house? Had his ego grown so large that he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed? Another buzz. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half. My half. Of my business. That I'd built myself, funded myself, grown myself, while he complained about my long hours and called it my hobby. I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow, Mark would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Mark. What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone and headed to my boutique. Friday was always our busiest day, and I had a new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life goes on, even when your husband runs off with a receptionist young enough to be his daughter. Around noon, his mother called. Claire, dear, Mark told us everything. About how controlling you've been, how you drove him away. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while I arranged a window display. Did he mention emptying our joint account and charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card? Silence. Then, well, he said you left him no choice, that you'd been cold and distant. Barbara, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money? Or maybe the one where he mocked my age? Another pause. He did seem a bit cruel. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Barbara. I've always liked you, but I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Mark's family during the proceedings. Proceedings? Already? Goodbye, Barbara. By late afternoon, Mark's sister Amanda was spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, Mark and Melissa were stuck at a budget motel near the airport, their Miami dreams temporarily derailed. He'd tried using his personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months. Another red flag I'd noticed. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given his admission of emptying the joint account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? Not yet, but he'll get the papers at his new motel address. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's social media is providing excellent evidence. She's been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about you. I smiled, thinking of my own documentation. A year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, text messages that proved premeditation. Mark had been so focused on his grand escape that he'd never considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed with another text. You think you're so smart. But I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Mark's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency hearing on Monday was everything I could have hoped for. Mark showed up in his new young wardrobe, designer jeans too tight for his age, a blazer that screamed midlife crisis. Melissa waited outside, her youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. Mark's gleeful text about emptying our account, his credit card fraud, his documented history of hidden expenses, each piece carefully collected over months of quiet observation. Your Honor, Mark's hastily hired lawyer attempted, my client admits to some rash decisions, but Mrs. Harrison's actions have been vindictive and calculating. Calculating? My lawyer countered. You mean prudent? My client protected her separate assets and maintained detailed records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive. That's smart business. The judge reviewed my documentation, the separate property deed to the house, the boutique's incorporation papers in my name only, the careful separation of business and personal finances that Mark had always complained about. Mr. Harrison, the judge addressed Mark directly, you admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? Mark shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets? The business grew during our marriage. Mark's lawyer tried again. My client is entitled to... The business was established before the marriage, my lawyer interrupted, and Mrs. Harrison maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every penny invested and earned. I watched Mark's face as reality started sinking in. He'd thought this would be easy. Empty our accounts, run off with his girlfriend, maybe claim half my business in the divorce. He'd never bothered to understand my insistence on keeping things separate, had mocked my careful bookkeeping as obsessive. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. But that money's gone, Mark protested. We spent it on... Then I suggest you find a way to replace it, the judge cut him off. And Mr. Harrison, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours. Outside the courthouse, I heard Melissa asking Mark about their Miami plans. His response was lost in the sound of my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he'd never understood or respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Mark. He tried claiming the boutique had been his idea. He remembered investing money in its early days. He even suggested he'd been my business partner all along, claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records. He's getting desperate, my lawyer observed. His girlfriend's social media shows they're staying at her studio apartment now. Apparently, living on a receptionist's salary isn't quite the glamorous escape he imagined. Mark's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. We had no idea, his sister Amanda admitted. He told us you'd been cold, controlling, that he needed to escape. But then we saw his texts, the way he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew." His mother called again, this time in tears. "The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger, I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway." I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. The boutique thrived, ironically boosted by local gossip about my situation. Women started coming in specifically to show support, often leaving with far more than they'd planned to buy. "My ex tried something similar," one customer confided while buying a designer handbag. "Thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them." My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Mark, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. "You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support." I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Melissa was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed exciting during secret hotel meetings felt different in the harsh light of reality. She posted about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes yesterday, my lawyer mentioned during an update call, and removed her relationship status this morning. I almost felt sorry for Mark. Almost. But then I remembered his "ha-ha" after telling me he'd emptied our account. The casual cruelty of his comments about my age. The way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else. Pride. Pride in my foresight, in my quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from Mark's imagined triumph. Gone was his cocky attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Melissa was noticeably absent. She'd moved on to a coworker her own age, according to office gossip. Mark had shown up in his old clothes, the designer wardrobe apparently returned to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented separation of assets. "Your Honor," Mark's lawyer attempted one last time. "Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support and—" "Moral support?" my lawyer interrupted. "Like these text messages belittling Mrs. Harrison's business as a little shop? Or these social media posts calling it her hobby?" The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. Mark got his personal possessions and his car, which was worth less than he owed on it. "You've destroyed me," he hissed as we left the courthouse. "I'll have to move back in with my parents." "No, Mark, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too." His mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house, his new home at 45. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my age was now living in his childhood bedroom, while I continued running my successful business. "You planned this all along," he accused. "You knew this would happen." "No, I just paid attention, and unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records." His mother stepped between us. "That's enough, Mark. You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her start in on him. "Honestly, what were you thinking? A 20-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible texts?" I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but relief. Mark had thought he was writing the ending to our story with that cruel text. Instead, he'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed, not with texts from Mark this time, but with notifications of new orders from my boutique's website. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he'd imagined. Part 3, Segment 1, 600 words. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my boutique had expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Mark struggled to rebuild his life, the little shop he'd dismissed was thriving. I'd hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining traction nationally. News of Mark's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He'd tried dating apps but found women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his history through office gossip, steered clear. Melissa had apparently warned her friends about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she'd left. His career suffered too. The company's HR department had launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion he'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with reception staff. He tried to claim age discrimination, Amanda told me during an unexpected visit to the boutique. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. HR just added that complaint to his file. I was surprised to see his sister in my store, but her presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly Mark had alienated his own family. I know we didn't support you at first, she admitted, running her fingers over a silk scarf. He played the victim so well, but watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. My lawyer kept me updated on Mark's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied, his claims of unfair distribution dismissed, based on the evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his text about emptying the account was just a joke, she told me, laughing. The judge asked if "ha-ha" made theft less illegal. The boutique's success brought unexpected validation. Local business magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned wife, but as a savvy businesswoman who'd protected her interests. Young entrepreneurs asked for advice about keeping business and personal finances separate. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me of Melissa. And always trust your instincts. Mark's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He'd tried online gambling, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. He'd gotten involved with a pyramid scheme that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions. But he's still blaming everyone else. You, Melissa, his company, the judge. I listened politely but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a 3rd boutique location and a possible expansion into luxury accessories. The only reminder of Mark's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office, his final text before I blocked his number. Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Below it sat my latest business award, proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my 3rd boutique location. The event attracted local media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a successful businesswoman expanding her brand. Mark's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Melissa unexpectedly walked in. She looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt that much stronger. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse like a shield. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I believed everything he told me, about how you were cold, controlling, how you didn't support his dreams. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on me when things got tough. I continued arranging a display of designer sunglasses. Those weren't his dreams, Melissa. They were escapes. There's a difference. I know that now. She paused, then added, He tried to move in when you froze the accounts. Thought my studio apartment would be temporary. After 2 weeks of him complaining about the size of my closet and suggesting I take out a loan for a bigger place, I understood what you meant about the difference between dreams and escapes. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess. He had big plans but no way to fund them? Exactly. Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off. Once he got that promotion, once his cryptocurrency definitely increased in value. She shook her head. I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a small apartment, but at least we're building something real. After she left, my assistant manager whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I replied. "That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did." Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a young couple examining our designer handbags. "Let's talk about your idea for expanding our accessories line." The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young entrepreneurs often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of protecting their assets. Mark's mother called one last time, not to discuss Mark, but to thank me. "You taught our family an important lesson," she said, "about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty. Mark's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems. But we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them." I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a fourth location. Mark had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Mark filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled, thinking of him in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. 2 years after Mark's cruel text message, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful business. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Q&A session, a woman asked about keeping business and personal finances separate. "My husband says I'm being paranoid, that marriage means sharing everything." "My ex-husband said the same thing," I replied, "right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce. Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia." The boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, each more successful than the last. The little shop Mark had mocked now employed 30 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through mutual friends, I heard Mark had finally moved out of his parents' house, into a small apartment above a garage. He'd had to take a lower-paying job after his former company downsized, eliminating his position during restructuring. His dating profile still listed him as young at heart, though his profile photo was clearly outdated. Melissa, ironically, had become a regular customer at my original boutique location. She'd earned her business degree and started her own social media consulting company. "You inspired me," she told me once, showing how a woman can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises. I kept Mark's cruel text message framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, I stood addressing my employees and loyal customers. The space had been transformed from a single little shop into the flagship store of a thriving business empire. Mark's mother attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. "I saw Mark yesterday," she said, smoothing her designer dress, one she'd bought from my store. "He was talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still doesn't understand that he didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that text message, his casual cruelty, his assumption that I would crumble without him, how he'd expected me to beg, to break, to prove him right about my desperation. Instead, I'd built something stronger than before. Each new boutique location was a testament to what women could achieve when they stopped dimming their light for insecure men. The young saleswoman I'd hired last month, coincidentally also named Melissa, came over with a question about the new inventory system I'd implemented. As I explained the process, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the store window. I saw what Mark had failed to see 5 years ago. Not a woman getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more successful. His cruel text message had meant to be an ending. Instead, it had been a beginning, not just for me, but for every woman who heard my story and realized she deserved better than someone else's midlife crisis.